If no one knows you exist, they can't find you. It's really important to invest in marketing.
Toccara Karizma, a digital marketing consultant expert and CEO of Karizma Marketing.
A multi-million-dollar digital marketing agency that helps business owners achieve significant sales goals.
For any entrepreneur, especially a service-based provider, lead gen and getting new clients in the door is their largest struggle. When you're selling your services and your content, it's not necessarily talking about the futures or what you do. It's the pain relief for the problem you're going to solve, like save someone time, freedom, making more money, having more time with their children, having less stress on their back.
What do you think is the big mistake that they're making in terms of how they're connecting with their audience, and what should they be focusing on?
The Content Capitalist Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Content Capitalist Podcast. I've got a guest with me today. Her name is Toccara. And just before we hit record, we were just riffing about all the stuff that we experienced growing up, like dial-up modem, like floppy disk drives. And it's so interesting to think about how the technology that we grew up with is considered ancient technology by our kids, even like my employees. They're like, what? Like they don't understand the concept of rolling up a cassette tape because, it got eaten by your Walkman. So that's the era we come from, but definitely not the era that we're in right now. Toccara, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much. You're reminding me of when I had my e-commerce store and I had teenagers helping me pack orders and we were listening to Nirvana and they had never heard of Nirvana. And I was like, you've never heard of Nirvana? What? And it was just a total generational thing. And so it's so funny to swap stories on that.
We're going to get into talking about business and marketing and stuff. But while we're talking about that, by the way, I've got 6 kids. My oldest is 26. My youngest is 16. And one thing that I so appreciate is that they love good music. Now, there's modern music that's great, amazing. But my 16-year-old daughter, she is going deep into Deep Purple, Aerosmith, Nirvana. That's why it just came back to me. Megadeth. And I'm like, wow, this is good music. And she's like pumping it in the kitchen, in the house. My son, he's collecting a large collection of vinyl records, and he's got all the classics. Tears of Joy here. I thought I was going to be out of touch, but they appreciate good music regardless of if it's 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 10 years ago, or yesterday. And that makes me really smile when I hear that. And they're not just listening to whatever's on pop these days, right?
I agree. You've done something right. Same with my children when they're listening to the same songs I listened to when I was their age, 25, 28 years ago. And it just blows my mind that we are still listening to that. And the same thing, Beatles and all the classics and their appreciation for it. It's like, that's when you know you've made it as a parent. It should be measured by the music your children listen to.
That's good. That's good. Okay. So before we lose the listeners with, well, we might be doing a good job of keeping them, I hope. But give us a snapshot real quick. What's your business and what are you doing in terms of revenue, in terms of like who's your customer segment and things like that? Give us the kind of the lay of the land here.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So I have a passion for e-commerce. I started in e-commerce back in 2007. So that's dating me a little bit. And I learned very quickly that I really enjoyed the service side of the business versus the inventory and paying for orders. And I really enjoyed marketing and building a business, and I was good at it. So I transitioned into that about 6 or 7 years ago into a full service digital marketing agency that, because I have a passion for e-commerce, we serve 7-figure plus e-commerce brands with an omni-channel approach to digital marketing. So that means anything from email marketing to paid ads, search engine optimization, website CRO, website development and design, and many other factors that go into growing a business online. And so we have a little bit of a niche in that area in that we're not for everyone. I'm blessed to have a 7-figure plus agency now that I've worked really hard to build an amazing team that has helped get me there. I couldn't have done it on my own. And we really specialize in that very specific area of e-commerce where these are brands that are a little bit more established. They've worked with other marketing agencies. They have larger email lists. And then we go and we make sure that they hit all of the needs that they need to hit in terms of us making sure that we can have what looks like success to them, and we can do that for them. So we'll qualify them before we start working together.
Love that. Now, back in 2007, when you started your own e-commerce, like the tech stack must have been so different. You didn't have tools like Shopify where you could, do 5 clicks and your shop is up. I think probably the best version you could do back then was stitching together a bunch of WordPress plugins and crossing your fingers, praying to God that, that nothing breaks before you wake up in the morning, and then you got to pull out the duct tape and fix it again. Tell me, what was that like, figuring out how to get that started? Did I describe what pretty much it was like?
It was like, it was the desert. E-commerce was the desert. Drop shipping wasn't even a term back then. I started hearing the term drop shipping probably around 2010, 2009. Facebook only had 20 million users, not 3 billion users. Shopify didn't exist. I was on what was called Zencart, which was before WooCommerce existed. Yes, right? So this was a whole other world. Less than 5% of people were shopping on mobile phones. Like, mobile commerce didn't exist back then. So we're talking completely different world. And that's honestly where I did all of my grassroots learning. I mean, I was on the ground doing my own QuickBooks, doing my own designs, doing all of my order fulfillment, opening and closing the doors to my business, which is why I'm such a huge advocate of email marketing, because I learned back then what everyone else was doing, which was pounding the pavement, knocking door to door to sell their products. I had an apparel brand. And people would ask me, why aren't you going to the boutique down the street and selling your stuff? I'm like, why would I do that if I send one email, go to sleep, and wake up with 10 times the amount of money than that one boutique could ever provide for me? And it was 1/10 the work. So I learned the power of making money while I slept, and the power of going national. And actually, it was an international brand. We went international, which you couldn't do before the world of, the internet and digital marketing and digital commerce. So that's where I learned that I was onto something. This is a really powerful thing. So it was a different world. It wasn't where it is now. And that's why I say it's never been easier to build a business. We have so many tools at our fingertips.
It's never been easier.
Yes.
It's never been easier.
Yes.
And tell me, I'm curious, what was the first product that you started with?
I started with, I love that most businesses, if you think about any business that you've probably started, it came out of a need usually, or a pain point, or something you couldn't find, right? So I really wanted to find some cute clothing for my children. I wasn't able to. I was pregnant with my son at the time. And so I decided that I wanted to build my own business where I could make to order, so I could save money on inventory, make to order different designs and put them on different baby clothing, basically. And so that was the business, which then evolved into doing more wholesale orders and big boutique orders and working with Zulily and brands like that. However, it started from a need. It started from, there was an opportunity in the market that wasn't being filled, which tends to be the best ones. And I wanted to jump on it. And that's where it all came to be in the beginning.
And what were you doing before you jumped on that?
So I'm a business economics major. And I'm a daughter of 2 entrepreneur doctors. So I definitely have a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak in me. And before that, I was involved in a business that was a construction business. So building homes from the ground up, and real estate. So with my real estate license. And once I became pregnant, your passions change in life. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, and I'm 42, so.
Me too. I still have that thing in me. Like, I feel like I'm just getting started. I feel like this is just the beginning of an adventure.
I know.
Still.
And that's still.
And I think I will be at 60 and 70 and 80. I don't think it's going to go away.
I
don't.
certainly hope so. I couldn't imagine waking up every day without purpose and passion, whatever that might look like. And I see our children too, because my son is 17, and I know you have 6 children, and they range from 16 to 26, I believe you said. And so it's seeing them trying to figure out what they want to do with the rest of their lives, and we're still trying to figure it out. So it's a lot. So things change, your passions change, and you go through different things. And so that's where I was before. And I lost my passion for real estate. And I was just so in this new world of babies and clothing and wanting to take care of myself. And so that's where I did the transition, because I realized from there, once I built that business really well, and I know that that was my background, I kind of figured out the magic to grow a business online. And not a lot of people knew how to do that at that time. And that's when I switched over to marketing services for other e-commerce businesses. So I didn't have to buy the inventory. I didn't want to stay stuck, filling orders. I didn't want to deal with customer service. I wanted to be a wanderlust and live this like freedom lifestyle. So I switched over to the service end of the e-commerce industry.
That's very cool. When you were starting out in your business, what were, besides the tech, what were some of the biggest challenges then that people today might feel like, oh, I can't believe it used to be like that?
Yeah.
There's obviously the tech part, right? The speed and things like that. But then things like just convincing people to actually process an order online, or getting advertisers to rank your stuff, or figuring out new channels of distribution. Like, what kind of things were there that we just don't see anymore?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, honestly, probably nailed in the beginning was tech, because it was so new and so many people weren't doing these things. To find other service providers who could help me market the business or provide website development services, it wasn't like it is now, right? And everything was specially coded to work versus now we have this amazing platform, Shopify, and there's other great ones out there, WooCommerce and Magento, and all sorts of different ones. But it's never been easier, where everything is kind of coded for you. You have a theme right there. Like, you had to create a theme. Or with Canva, right? Canva is such a brilliant, genius idea and creation.
I used to hate it. Now I can't live without it. Coming from a Photoshop and, Illustrator and, InDesign background, I used to be so snobbish. I was like, oh, such amateurs. What do they think they're doing? And then now I have a decentralized team, and I'm like, screw all these boutique tools. Let's go in with what works and is decentralized and is super easy.
Super easy. I know I was self-taught Photoshop as well back then. There was no Canva. I couldn't do that. So I had to learn some pretty high-level Photoshop skill sets to do all the design work. QuickBooks was a desktop software. You couldn't invoice through QuickBooks back then, right? Or if you had an e-commerce store, you had to have a merchant account. Shopify, you just get that with Shopify, right? You don't have to have a separate merchant account. Like, all these things were so much more difficult to do at that time, but it's because it was in its infancy. It was, almost in the times of, and I wish I could track down the metric. I would love to know the year that Amazon switched from just selling books to then becoming what it is today. But it was like in that era where it was like everything was just different. eBay was one of the top websites in the world. Amazon was just selling books. Facebook was at 20 million. Like, we didn't have social.
Yeah, could you imagine Amazon being a bookstore?
I was using it when it was a bookstore. That's
all it was. And I remember a time where I felt a little bit offended. Like, who are you trying to be? You're a bookstore. Like, why am I seeing pillows, and bicycles, and like, what is going on? Like, you're a bookstore. I got a little bit offended for a short period, and then it took off.
And then it took off. Well, we all wish we had that idea, right? And so much of it, I feel like, is being in the right place at the right time. It's probably a lot of my career has been that on just the cusp of something that's about to break through. And it's more luck than anything else, to be honest. It's just something I'm interested in. I'm in a tech-driven industry, so maybe that gives me an advantage. But it's definitely changed, and it's so much easier now. It's so much easier to have an online business than it ever was before.
Wow, this is so fun talking about all this. Let's talk also about what's working right now in terms of what's the most effective methods right now for marketing an e-commerce site, whether it's a blend of UGC, paid, organic, email, all the above. Like, what's the go-to strategy? Give me the lay of the land here.
Yeah, it's a good question because we never know what's going to be the next MySpace or, the rumors of TikTok getting shut down in the US, which will be an interesting one to see how that turns out. But when I first started, Facebook ads were really a big thing with the agency. It was like the go-to thing and everyone was doing it. It was very easy to make money. And now that market's so saturated and we have privacy limitations that don't make it as easy to run these types of paid ads. And so that's where we started transitioning as an agency to just providing more of these omni-channel services, because we learned that you have to have your hands in kind of every little bucket. And the more buckets you have your hands in when it comes to marketing, the more they feed off of each other and the more you catapult your growth very quickly. So what I always believe is working right now are things that maybe aren't the sexiest things. So for example, you can take your business really, really far with SEO, not so sexy, search engine optimization. Some people don't really know what that means. It really means like trying to get your website to rank on the first page of Google because no one will see it if it's past the first page, for free, to get free traffic to your website for your keywords that you really want people to see your website for. So SEO, email marketing, which is huge and has some of the highest ROI, like 42x return for every dollar you put into email marketing. You get an average $42 back. That's insane. I'd like to buy $1 million home and then literally tomorrow sell it for 42 million. That's what email marketing is doing for you. So growing email lists is very important these days. And for me personally, I love website CRO because if you don't have a website that converts, what are you going to do with all that traffic? So we really need to make sure that our website is set up in a way that will convert once we're kind of optimizing everything else. But on top of all of that, what's working today that didn't work before is a lot of some of the other things you mentioned, which is UGC, user-generated content. Because social media has become such a huge part of our lives, we want to see real people using real products. And as soon as it looks commercial or scripted or framed, people are turned off because that's not what they're doing on those social media platforms. So things like TikTok Shop, where you have influencers pushing products and then they're putting them in their shops, though that is really booming and growing as an industry right now.
It's been blowing up, blowing up. And do you think that that's part of the reason why like TikTok is under threat? Because before, TikTok was just kind of threatening like Instagram and Facebook, but now they're also threatening Amazon. Yeah. So do you think now it's like, okay, it's like threatening a couple big, American businesses, and then there's more pressure? I don't know. Do you think there's anything to do with that? Or do you really think that there's Chinese spies behind all the software, or both?
I would never want to be a politician. That is probably the last job I would ever want on this earth because it's just a lose-lose job.
You got Mark Zuckerberg breathing down your neck, and then Jeff Bezos and the CIA and the FBI.
It just would not be a fun one. It's just a thankless job in the end. But I wouldn't be surprised if there might be something to these theories about, these big businesses have a lot of funding and a lot of pull in the government. I don't think it's any mystery that these big companies do lobby. And there was a theory that I heard on Amazon Prime Day that the links on TikTok weren't working because the influencers were going on TikTok and pushing their Amazon links instead of their TikTok shop. But then TikTok went down mysteriously that day for the link sharing and those types of things. I don't know, we don't know, but I imagine that there are many battling to be the number one marketplace for especially this generation, this younger generation, which is really heavily on TikTok, although there's plenty of people our age on TikTok as well. We're still relevant a little bit. We still got it a little bit. But I think that those types of selling, like just real selling and just UGC video is a huge one. Even video on your e-commerce site, that's a big thing. There's been plenty of data to show that consumers want to see products in real life.
Let's talk a bit more about video. Like, what kind of video is the best when it comes to paid ads? What kind of video is the best for organic marketing for e-commerce?
Yeah, I think if you're really a great marketer, you're blending the two very well and making it like a native ad where someone doesn't even realize they're looking at an ad, to be honest. They are like, oh, how do I know this person? Like, why are they in my feed? Is that like my cousin or what? Because it just feels so real. It feels like your friend, because the best marketing is word of mouth, right? We can't even pay for that. But on social media and ads and organic, we kind of have to pay for it, right? Through content creation. And so I think anything that has to do with unboxing or styling something or how-tos, like makeup brands, how to do this eyelash tutorial, or clothing brands, styling them together, giving people ideas of how to use these products, or educational. So it's explaining what are the benefits of these products. Those types of videos can work well as long as they feel very organic and native to the platform. But then it's a complete opposite. On your website, yes, you can be like Fashion Nova. I love Fashion Nova's marketing in every aspect of what they do. Love or hate Fashion Nova, their marketing is amazing.
So what you're saying is on your website, it should look like you paid $1 million for this photo shoot, but on social media, it should look like you just whipped out your phone from your back pocket and hit record. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And there's a trend now. Yeah, there's a trend now. If you were to go to a website like Fashion Nova, it would say like shop it on social. So then you have another, feed in your product that's really pulling in your social content into that product page so they can shop the look from social media. So they're even bringing UGC into the website. But I always tell my students and clients, when was the last time you ever went to an e-commerce store and bought a product, bought like a shirt that was laid out on someone's floor and like they took a photo with their iPhone, right? Like that doesn't happen. Like you're not going to sell it like that. So if you wouldn't buy a product like that on an e-commerce store, then why would you expect someone else to do that with your e-commerce store? So yes, your product photos and your videos, they need to look very professional, but doesn't mean that there can't be a section to shop the look or shop social, which would kind of tie the whole user experience together.
Got it. Tell me about an extremely challenging project that you took on, or a client, where it took some time to figure out how to market it, to get it to convert, and the kind of the process you went through and how it's going now.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I love the challenging projects, to be honest, especially big projects, really big for big brands that really have these big problems. And I would say one of the ones where we didn't anticipate it taking as long as it did, and we have done it for multiple clients now, is rebuilding their entire navigation menu and all of their collections and all of their site links. And it's basically
like, what kind of products are we talking about though?
For this particular example, it would be alcohol, so liquor. So we have a client who has now become like one of the top online liquor brands in the US, online liquor stores. And so they have about 3,000 SKUs or more, actually, between 3,000 and 4,000 SKUs. And we have gotten them to over 100,000 organic clicks every month. Like they're growing like crazy. And so in all of that and restructuring their website, because website CRO, conversion is very important, but SEO is really important as well. So what we did is we had to blend our SEO services with our website development services, because if you're just doing website development and you don't have an SEO director looking over the site map and how we want to lay out the navigation menu, how we want to lay out the collections, the sub-collections, the products, it's such a huge project. And then tag products. So if we want an advanced filter system, which is what we did for this client. So let's say, for example, we go to a whiskey collection, it's just whiskey. And then we want to be able to filter by brand or by age or by location, right? We can do all of that with advanced tagging, which is a code that's like this long. It's like 3 pages long that it crashes a Google Sheet every time you try it, to try to get the tags properly done. Like this is a massive project. This is not for the faint of heart.
So it's not really, we're not talking about marketing here. We're talking more like organization and the checkout process, like improving the UX, right? To optimize for cart value.
Yes. And SEO at the same time, which is so cool. And it's something where you would think, yes, the website development itself takes 3 months, but then this whole side, just the menu, just the navigation, all the SEO research that goes into it, all the URLs, all the meta descriptions, all the filtering, that was a whole other 3 months of heavy lifting to do that. And it's, of course, working.
What I'm seeing here is that you really get your hands dirty. You're not just talking about, getting more leads in the front door. Once they're in the front door, you're going to, hold their hand and take them down every aisle, pick their favorite stuff, get their credit card out, make sure that they pay and they have a happy, exit too. Like, I think that most agencies stop at, hey, we got this many qualified leads for you. What led you to actually want to be, do every aspect? Because what that means is that your team gets a lot more complex too, because you got your ads team. Then you have a whole different skill set, which is optimizing the web experience. Like, do you do this for everybody or is this very unique?
Yeah, that's a great question, because sometimes potential clients mistaken us as generalists because we do a lot of different services, and we have to correct them and say, no, we have specialists in every area. And you're absolutely correct. It's a much more complex business. It requires a much larger team, but we truly believe, and the reason why we did this is because, to be perfectly honest, we were working with like C-team players with other agencies that didn't know what they were doing, and we wanted full control over projects because we had the expertise and we knew we could do it better. So when we get a client, usually it's very normal for them to start maybe one or two different things with us. They think they just want email marketing, but once they work with our team and they develop a relationship, they see how we work, they see the results, that's when they start asking about all of our other services. And it kind of builds from there, where naturally, yes, we should do SEO. We'll give you an audit, look at all these areas that we can improve. And yes, the website needs to be rebuilt. It's like anything else, you need to kind of give it a facelift every 10 years or so. So it starts kind of stacking on each other. But the way that started was truly because we understood and wanted full control of the entire marketing framework for a business, because we always did it better. I know it sounds horrible, but it's true. We always did it better than someone
If you got enough confidence to say that straight to your prospect's face, then you earned it, right? You earned that extra business.
And I've never failed in that.
Thank you for giving me that example. But was there an instance where there was a very challenging situation in getting new customers or new prospects in the front door, as far as like getting the right messaging, using the right media, and things like that? Because I think a lot of people listening, we have a bunch of business owners, right? And this is called the content capitalist. It's how to capitalize on content, whether it's paid media, whether it's behind a Paygate media or UGC, whatever that's going to be. So if we're thinking about getting the right market message fit and getting that connection, do you have any experience that you can share with us?
Yeah, definitely. I think that probably for any entrepreneur, especially a service-based provider, is their largest struggle. Lead gen and getting new clients in the door, probably the thing that keeps them up the most at night. And the thing that a lot of them probably are missing is, one is, yes, paid ads are really, really important. Like, you can be the best at what you do, but if no one knows you exist, they can't find you. It's really important to invest in marketing. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a marketer. It's true. Like, unless you have really great SEO, or you're growing your email list, or you're running paid ads, people really can't find you. Of course, for other service-based providers, the local networking groups are very important, and those can be very helpful in generating a lot of leads. And even my sister, who owns a CPR business, does a lot of postcard mailers that do very well for her in her local community. So it really, you have to think about, where are people going to find you? So if you're a local service provider, a lot of times people are searching Google, not Facebook. Don't run Facebook ads, run Google ads, optimize your SEO locally, optimize your Google My Business profile. And in terms of content, the way that we do content for SEO, and I'm talking about written content, is we really look up keywords that are commercial or transactional based. And we invest in, high level, it's somewhat expensive SEO tools, but there's some free resources out there.
Could you give me some examples of the SEO tools that, like, the experts like yourself use?
Yeah. We love SEMrush. There's another one that's called
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Ahrefs, SEMrush.
Yes,
Yep.
Moz is another one a lot of people use. The one that I love that's pretty free and affordable, or pretty low priced, is Keywords Everywhere. And then Neil Patel has his Uber Suggests, which you can kind of get a lifetime membership to, and it's not as advanced as the other ones, but it's still helpful. I love that Keywords Everywhere also works for YouTube, and it gives you quite a bit of navigation through the YouTube SEO world, because don't forget, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, right after Google. So it's really important to understand how SEO works there. And in your content itself, and this is the same regardless of if you're a service provider or even if you're an e-commerce owner, we look for keywords that are easier to rank for, because you cannot rank for a difficult keyword if you don't have the domain authority. And we look for commercial and transactional keywords. So we're trying to drive traffic that are in a decision.
Give me examples of that for people, as if I know nothing about SEO. What's the transactional? Well, let's put some skin on this.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you a perfect example of a type of blog that I would write, and probably one of our top blogs on like my website, that was very intentional to be commercial or transactional based, where someone was in the deeper part of the funnel of making a decision. Because I'm a Klaviyo partner, I have a Klaviyo affiliate link. So I did the SEO research. I found that Klaviyo versus MailChimp is a really big term. Now and that is a commercial or transactional term, because when people are starting to compare tools or products, they're in decision-making mode, like Adidas versus Nike, Mac versus PC, right? And so that is where someone's really about to hit like the pay button. So all of my blogs, instead of saying, what is email marketing, which is an informational keyword, or what is Klaviyo, so they don't know what Klaviyo is. And of course, that will be in my blog. That'll be part of it because I have multiple keywords. But the title of the blog, the main part of the blog, is that transactional piece where they're deeper down the funnel. And if you do pay for those higher ticket SEO tools, you can actually filter out commercial and transactional based keywords versus informational keywords. And we always try to avoid informational and try to get very specific on where someone's a little bit further down the funnel. And so you can think about that for your business. So let's say you install garages and you do 2 different brands. And if the SEO research, suggests that is something that has enough volume on it. Now, remember, this is very niche, and you're in a local community. Very likely it's not going to matter as much in a very niche, like local service provider. But that's something where you could write a blog about these 2 different brands, which is better. Or if someone's trying to decide which material to put on their floor or their roof, right? Like these are the kinds of things that we would call H1 or H2 tags, the titles or subheadings on various pages on your website, so that you can guide people who are really in that purchasing making decision. They might ask different things at that point than what they're asking in the beginning, like what material are Adidas made out of versus Nike or something. Is a little bit higher up than like what's the best running shoe, Adidas 560s or Nike Pros, that sounds like someone who's ready to buy.
Okay. And does this same idea spill over into, let's say, a YouTube video?
Yep, absolutely. And usually I say with YouTube videos, well, I'll ask you, Ken, what would be the top search term you use on YouTube? What do you usually type in?
Well, it depends what I'm looking for. It's usually a person's name. Like I hear about somebody and then I want to just figure out who they are.
Yes. Okay. That's a good one. And for people who are providing services, a lot of the times they're solving a problem, right? And a lot of the time,
how to,
exactly.
Right.
Most YouTube videos that are educational in nature or training in nature would be how to do X. Now, you have to be very careful not to show them the whole thing that you charge for, right? You can show them the why, but maybe not the how, right? And it depends on what service you're in. Or you can also take that blog strategy and honestly move it over to YouTube as well, because people are also searching, and you can actually put the YouTube video on your website for additional SEO on that same blog, which I did, Klaviyo versus MailChimp, which is better. I have also the YouTube video that has the exact same title on it and big in the headline, because they share a lot of the same keywords and search volume. So you can kind of take one strategy and put it on the other and actually marry the two and put them on the same blog or website page, which would ultimately increase your visibility online. So
do you think that it's worth it, like for every YouTube video? Because right now I'm actually in the process of, I hired a branding agency and another web dev team to because I have multiple businesses and my personal brand, right? So I'm rejigging things, right? And I've got this podcast, which we're doing right now. And let's say that, this podcast goes on YouTube. Would it be beneficial to also embed the YouTube video in its own blog page, do a write-up about what we discussed, key points and things like that, SEO optimized? Like, how much more SEO juice is it versus just having it on YouTube or having it on my blog plus having the YouTube video embedded? Like, is that like a double whammy, a triple, or like kind of?
It definitely is, because you could link back, so YouTube has great SEO juice to it, because actually views on YouTube, unlike social media, grow over time. So your backlinks on YouTube will grow over time. You get a lot of SEO juice. So I always like to put the link very high on my YouTube description that someone can go and find it. And then from there on your blog, like let's say you wrote a blog on our conversation today. Our conversation, I wouldn't recommend you do the transcript. The transcript isn't what someone's searching.
That's too long.
It's not going to work. But what you can do is look up several ideas that we talked about, title the blog that, write your own blog on it, right? And put in like the YouTube video and reference it somewhere in the blog, right? Maybe towards a little bit of like the top third. And, here we talked to, Toccara Karizma about, how to optimize your e-commerce store for SEO or something like that, if that's the blog that you're writing about. So at that point, you can embed it. And the same would be true for your YouTube. You wouldn't title your YouTube video like interview with Toccara Karizma, unless I had a lot of weight, but let me tell you, I don't. I'm no Kim Kardashian. I don't have that kind of SEO pull. But what you could do is look up certain terms that we talked about, and you could say something like e-commerce, SEO with, digital marketer Toccara Karizma, or that's a horrible title, but something along those lines where you're using one of those SEO terms.
I'm going to riff on this, okay? I'm going to be like the three-pronged strategy for e-commerce that's working in 2024 or something like that.
Yes.
Something kind of, that feels modern.
Yeah. Expert SEO tips for e-commerce store owners, updated 2024 or something like that, or 2024s. So you can look up.
That's exactly what it's going to be.
Yeah. And usually titles with numbers in them work really well, especially odd numbers, usually titles with the year in them, but you don't want to add those to your URL. You just add them to the title, because if you need to go back and optimize or change that video or that blog in the future, you don't want to be stuck with the URL with the number of tips you have, because you might need to add more in the future, or you might want to update it in 2025 to say 2025, and you don't ever want to touch your URL. So you just change the title.
I'm curious about something here. We're both in the services/agency space, and sometimes you bring on a client and you can see how things could be done a lot better, but some clients are really precious about not wanting to change stuff just because they've done it forever. Give me a couple examples where people are stubborn about not wanting to change something, and like what kind of stuff is outdated that people just don't want to change that you're seeing?
That's a great question. And we try to kind of weed out business owners who might not be open to our help and our suggestions, because we do everything from a place of data. Like everything is truly, it's in data. The data shows this will help. And when we do see that, a lot of times it tends to be design elements. Like they really want this homepage design. But the thing is, and this happened with a client, we let them know, hey, we'll complimentary audit. They had redone their website with a different agency. Let us audit your new website so we can tell you how to optimize it for conversions. They didn't do that. They published the website. Their revenue went down 30% pretty quickly, especially from their homepage, which is the most important page of your website, because they took everything that was transactional off the homepage because they wanted to tell the story behind their products. Like they were very set on, I want to tell the story, which was beautiful and great, but we need to make money. So as soon as you took away all the transactional pieces and elements on your homepage, which it should all be transactional, we lost a lot of money. But that was a case in which they were kind of unwilling to bend and take the advice, and it hurt them. And they would have benefited by we could have hit that same goal with them just in a different way. We could have put those descriptions further in the product details or on a different page or in a blog, right? It didn't have to be done that way. So we could have married what they wanted with what would actually convert. So we find a lot of the times it's that. The other thing we find is business owners who honestly, they don't want to invest the money in what is needed. And they don't understand that if they would just invest the money, they'd actually make so much more money. And there's nothing we can do to convince them. And that's on us. Maybe we need to give them that value proposition more clearly. But if they only knew, if you would just do this one thing, we could skyrocket your business. But they just look at the dollars. They don't look long-term or big picture. And so that can really come back to bite them in the end, where we just can't quite change their mind.
It is a scary thing though, isn't it? Because like I've gotten advice from agencies I've worked with to put my money behind certain things, and I've been burned, right? So they probably have that history too. So as much as they want to trust you, there's also the history of being disappointed that's going to, have their tolerance for risk at wherever it is, depending on their experience. I think that the people I've worked with who have been most willing to pull the trigger are the ones who actually understand the technology or the methods, and they've been around long enough to see the logical sense in the proposition, and then they're willing to take a risk. The people who don't understand the technology are the ones who just look at it like rolling a dice. Like, okay, we've worked with 6 agencies and 3 of them sucked. And 3 of them worked out. So I'm going to guess that this is a 50-50 chance. And I'm not rolling, my dice on $300,000 project for 50-50, right? So that might be what's going on in their mind, because that's sometimes what goes on in my mind, having been burned once or twice. So yeah, there's 2 sides of that,
There's definitely 2 sides. And that's why we prefer ultimately to work with those clients that are in that range where they've kind of already surpassed that. And they just like you said, they understand the technology and the tools. They've already invested a lot in their business. So they have a better understanding ultimately of what's needed for their business, what they need to invest in. And that tends to be an conversation. I apologize about that, but that tends to be an easier conversation at that point when they've already done a lot of the heavy lifting for us. And they have a little bit more trust in us at that point of what we're saying, and are more willing to invest in it because they understand it better. And I think for a small business owner, I always say the things that we usually struggle with the most is decisions around money and employees. It's usually the hardest decisions as an entrepreneur. And I always say, if I were to close my eyes and think about the person I look up to or the business I look up to and I want to be like, and ask myself, did they invest in this? Did they invest in this heavy piece of equipment or this technology or an agency or a conference? If they were doing that and I'm scared to do that, the answer should be yes for me. Because if I want to get to where they are, they've already outlined the path, And so if I follow it without all the mistakes that they've already had, then it should work. So it's little things like that you can do to ask yourself to minimize the pain in making these financial decisions that you're unsure of, is kind of look at people who've done it before you and see, are they doing this?
There's something I learned from my mentor. His name is Taki. And what he said is, you want to pick the clients who want you but don't need you. When they pay you, they're not necessarily buying a solution. What they're doing is they're buying speed. They can get there themselves somehow because they're entrepreneurs. They'll by hook or by crook, they'll figure it out. But you're the expert, and you'll help them get there faster and in a more elegant, and skipping over the mistakes. You get there faster, get better results. But if they really needed to, they could do it themselves. And those are my favorite clients, because when people need you, that's where the term needy comes from. It's just not a good relationship. It's something goes wrong, it's always your fault. And that's just because they don't have the ability to solve the problem. So you become the savior. And so you're either a hero or a villain. You're nothing in between. Like, it's going amazing. Oh my God, I love you. Something went wrong. Oh my God, you're the worst. And I can tell from that laugh that you've experienced that. But then there's the guys who yeah, I can figure it out, but you're doing pretty well. I'd rather just hire your team and we'll get there faster.
Exactly. And Totally. And that's when you're selling your services too. And in your content, it's not necessarily talking about the futures or what you do. It's the pain relief or the problem you're going to solve, like save someone time. And we hear so many times from our clients, like, I don't have time to do this, or I'm doing it all. I'm wearing all the hats in my business. So that's where you want to lean into. That's the benefit for them. That's the pain point you're solving. It's not necessarily that you're running ads. They don't care about ads. They care about, freedom, making more money, having more time with their children, having less stress on their back. And so those are the things you can lean into as well with your content when you're trying to look for new clients.
As we wrap this up, I'd like to ask you to speak to the person listening. They're going to be a business owner and they've got either a product or service that they're trying to get better results with. And through, the breadth of experience and time you spent in this, what do you think is the big mistake that they're making in terms of like how they're connecting with their audience, and what should they be focusing on?
That's a great question. I think for a lot of business owners, I imagine the overwhelm's legit, and it is for me just the same. And so sometimes we spread ourselves too thin and then nothing gets done. It's like, instead of having 3 big goals in the year, that was our mistake in our agency. We had 10 goals. Like they didn't get done, So I think knowing what's going to pull the lever the most with your limited amount of time, because your time truly is limited, and focusing in those areas, and then hiring experts or having a team that can focus in the other areas where you may not have an expertise or you're not able to do it as efficiently, is actually going to be in your benefit, even if it sounds scary. I did not get to like 7 figures in my business without a team. There was no way. I couldn't do it all. So I think thinking that you're going to do it all and save money is probably a very big mistake, versus feeling out where your skill set is and where your real magic lies, focusing in those areas, and then hiring experts in the others to help get you there. If, of course, it makes sense and you've laid, a decent enough foundation to invest in something like that. So I would focus my time more wisely and then hire experts to fill in the gaps and help advise me in areas that I might not be the expert in.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. And for everybody else who's listening, thank you for listening all the way to the end. And obviously, because you listened to the end, this must have been a banger of an interview. Go ahead and give it as many stars as you think it deserves. And because we've got Toccara on the show, it's definitely a 5-star. There's no other choice. Toccara, thank you so much for being with us. And for everybody else, I'll see you next week.
No hustle, worship here, we're a different breed. Action is what we got if action is what you need. Content capitalist, we're breaking the mold. Cause the old ways fading, new stories to be told. So content capitalist, get to the prize.